Cities for the 21st Century. The loom weaves the thread, the warp is formed, and the fabric emerges. From at least the 13th century on, one city in northeastern Spain has dedicated its entire capacity and 8 centuries of specialization to the textile industry. It's no coincidence that when people speak of Terrassa's urban layout, they use a word entramado, whose origin can be traced back to early fabric making. Terrassa, the interwoven city. Terrassa is located within the region encompassed by metropolitan Barcelona and linked to the Catalan capital by several highways, 2 toll roads, and 2 railway lines. Terrassa's famous jazz festival draws music fans from all over the country and gives city residents a good excuse to take to the streets. The Multimedia and Photography School is a fine example of the blending of both classicism and modernity. One part stems from the digital revolution, while the other emphasizes training in the more traditional arts. Égara, a Roman city, was the forerunner of a village that would play a generally discreet role in the Middle Ages, but experienced spectacular growth in the Industrial Age. Its development was curtailed by the textile crisis in the 1970s. However, the 1992 Olympic Games in Barcelona would prove to be a catalyst for unprecedented growth and rebuilding. Cities are like families. There is a deep link, the same foundation. But let's start at the beginning. Around a palace, of which only the tower remains, a medieval village grew up, with its limits marked by this cross. The bridge spans a waterway that linked it with the village of Sant Pere, which until the 19th century was an independent municipality. A set of 3 churches, those of Sant Pere, Sant Miguel, and Santa Maria, is an exceptional point of reference vis-à-vis early medieval art. Recent archaeological finds have inspired the questioning of certain historical aspects that were previously accepted as indelible truths. The simplicity of Terrassa's 3 churches bears scant testimony to the importance of this village, for it was once a bishopric and the site of a 7th century ecclesiastical council. Inside the Church of Sant Pere, the Gothic reredo by Jaume Huguet is an expressive vignette relating significant aspects of the lives of Saint Abdon and Saint Sennen. Since most people were illiterate then, the paintings were conceived as narrative works. On a curious note, the leg is that of a black person. This group of buildings, for so many years categorized simply as Visigothic in style, though certain to be reclassified soon, looms majestically over Vallparadís Park, the city's verdant north-south artery. Vallparadís Park was essentially a ravine that divided the town. Today it serves to unify a bustling city. Terrassa's well-known jazz festival includes an event known as Family Day. They call it Picnic Jazz. And while jazz may be considered by many as a minority phenomenon, in Terrassa it is anything but. overlooking Valparadís Park, is the Castillo Cartuja, the site of the city's principal museum. In the 1950s and 60s, when Terrassa experienced significant development and growth, the city received a wave of unprecedented immigration. There was no contention to speak of, no urban sprawl, but not much municipal funding either. In fact, the city's industries were essentially left to fend for themselves. But the factories and warehouses managed to withstand the passage of time. The years elapsed and viewpoints changed. Today, Terrassa is recognized as one of Europe's most important municipal patrimonies, particularly for its avant-garde industrial base. To this end, those who understood the strengths of this town fought for the legal protection needed to preserve a heritage which barely a few years ago very few believed would endure. Many factories remained in the city center, and it is this that has characterized the unique development of downtown Terrassa. Some of the factories have been preserved, others rehabilitated for apartments. There are new neighborhoods, but in very few cities around the country have we witnessed such substantial changes to a city center, in part due to its spectacular urban renewal effort. This factory was turned into studio apartments and condominiums, while preserving the essential elements of the original structure. Inside what was once a metallurgical workshop, there are now offices. Practically without exception, the beauty of Terrassa contains a commitment to practicality. What was once the electric company is now a restaurant, a bustling hub of activity. But there's more. The pharmacy was once a pastry shop. The decoration evokes the charm of a bygone era. This clothing store is another example of a converted building. It still preserves certain Art Nouveau details. The Josephine Convent may be one of the few buildings that hasn't become something else, along with the College of the Pious. In this case, what was once private housing is now of public use. Many Egara retirees seem to want to conquer new technologies, or at least not be intimidated by them. Laugh therapy, where we put aside our sense of the ridiculous, move hundreds of muscles, and rediscover an important part of ourselves. Recover the old architecture, but first recover the elderly. They fought in their time, and it seems right that the city guarantee them sufficient comfortable space. And also for the young ones. Respecting the facade of an old factory, a modern school has been built. These old dry cleaning buildings, today exhibition halls, are named after the architect who restored them. Lluís Munconil wasn't the only important architect who helped to transform this city, but he may very well be to Terrassa what Gaudí is to Barcelona. Among all the homes built back then, the Masia Freixa is perhaps the most delirious and simply fun. The oriel is total fantasy in the Moorish style, and the water tower suggests a camel's hump. Glass shards embedded in mortar. Many have fallen, but imagine the reflections they must have given off under a midday sun. From what remains, it's possible to discern how the imagination is capable of extrapolating everything. The spiral staircase, the ergonomic doorknobs, the door jambs, the butterfly-shaped hinges. It's none too difficult to understand why Lluís Munconil so enjoyed designing this home. In the mid-19th century, Terrassa grew spectacularly thanks to the Industrial Revolution. Railroad cars filled with wool and coal chugged into North Station. Once it had arrived, the wool was examined for quality. It was then sorted and distributed, before undergoing what was, and is, the specialized treatment that only Terrassan artisans could give it. All the factories had warehouses full of elaborately sewn fabrics. These warehouses were also wholesale shops. The logic of this business resulted in well-known architects being hired to design and construct what would become the symbols of these enterprises. It goes without saying that some of these warehouses left customers very impressed indeed. But what actually went on in these factories? Terrassa offers us a unique opportunity to understand the era we know as the Industrial Revolution. This was once a steamer, but today it is the Museum of Science and Technology of Catalunya. Beneath this sea of bricks, the glass-paned openings oriented to the north guaranteed a constant supply of sunlight, yet impeded the negative effects of direct light, which would have caused the fabrics to fade. However, the best is inside, a succession of vaults supported by tapped iron columns. This type of building was called a steamer because it functioned with steam power. In this way, the factory did without the customary hydraulic energy afforded by a river, which was necessary because Terrassa didn't have a river. But while the machinery was the heart of these factories, the intestines were in the basement, in the boiler. Carts and later trucks poured the fuel directly into the coal cellar. 12-hour shifts weakened the already sapped strength of the workers, who by this time had to punch in and out. This passageway, measuring about 10 meters, was the route the smoke took from the boiler to the base of the chimney. These iron stairs were used by the chimney sweeps, generally small boys due to the progressively narrow ascent and the tiny footholds. Among the factory's mementos is one that perhaps best depicts the conditions the workers experienced and likewise clarifies why this city was such a hotbed of labor movements. As the story goes, it was winter and a tremendous snowstorm hit. The owners decided to give the workers a day off, and several photographs were taken. Upon studying the faces of the men and women who toiled here, it's impossible to deduce that this was indeed a holiday. Nobody smiles. The prematurely wizened faces, the sunken eyes, and the clothes, decidedly too light for a cold winter day, are moving testimony from that bygone era. There is a certain amount of nostalgia in the sound of sardanes, Catalonian folk dances which serve to bring together all the different social classes and foment the creation of folklore of a country. Some workers' homes from that era have been preserved. The textile industry generated a wealthy upper class that turned Terrassa into a real city, a title it was granted in 1877. The Alegre de Sagrera home dates from the beginning of the 19th century, although it was restored in 1912. Today, it is the City Museum. One of the characteristics of modernism, or Spanish Art Nouveau, is that it managed to rescue glazed tile as a lay art form. It incorporated the latest advances of the era and bestowed dignity on the previously ill-considered bathroom. Art Nouveau brought with it the effervescence of the applied arts. From floor tiles to stairway balustrades, all the various elements of construction sought the artistic movement's harmony, which had identified in the curved line its finest sense of synthesis. The city has other homes of note, many of which have been restored while preserving the essential elements of the age. The market dates from that time too. As in many places, both Catalan and Spanish are spoken here indistinctly. The market is the largest iron building here. Its height and ventilation openings suggest the care given to proper sanitation. At the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th, Terrassa created its own savings bank and insurance mutual, several years before the institution of Social Security. It also saw the creation of the Bank of Terrassa, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Grand Casino. Besides being a cafe, today it sells books and records. But 100 years ago, it must have been a splendid place where the well-to-do gave their parties, paired their sons and daughters off, and even played a few clandestine gambling games. Well-founded rumors say that in the basement of the Grand Casino, great fortunes were lost. Its walls are still decorated with sports motifs, which in their day were the exclusive domain of the upper class. The Terrassa Swimming Club was established 70 years ago. Today it has 17,000 members, no less than 10% of the city's population. In general, Terrassans are very keen on sports. Soccer, swimming, basketball, track and field, but above all, field hockey. In 1910, a group of youngsters took up this sport. Today, Terrassa has some 7,000 field hockey players and 3 professional clubs. Many of the players on the gold medal team at the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games were native Terrassans. At the beginning of the 20th century, films were already very popular. This movie theater was built in 1916. In exemplary fashion, the Terrassa city government has taken upon itself the responsibility to preserve the Catalunya, so the only cinema in the downtown area doesn't disappear. Terrassa is the headquarters for the cinema school, the only one of its kind in all of Catalunya, and one of only a handful throughout Spain. In what was once the tuberculosis hospital, we find the Audiovisual Production Center, the embryo of a future visual arts mega-studio that evokes great expectations here. Terrassa is also where the only optics school in Catalunya is located. It now has some 600 students.
F, P, y no la veo. A ver.
Vuelve a mirar ahí al fondo, aquella O, correcto, tapa el ojito, vemos que no se mueve, no se mueve.
Student life is very animated. Terrassa has the second largest campus in Catalunya with nearly 13,000 students. However, we should remember that student life in Terrassa began here 100 years ago at the industrial school. Several types of engineering are offered here, though its origin in textiles embodies the real spirit of the place. When one speaks of textiles, people tend to imagine pants, blankets, or socks. But the world of textiles also encompasses research on new fibers, aseptic fabrics for medicine, personal protection against fire, bulletproof vests, spacesuits, and even baby diapers. The Technical Center for Spinning is a world leader in these and other fields. Among other things, the hockey fields are made with artificial grass developed here. The fourth leg of the table, as it were, is the Textile Museum. Its library contains nearly 10,000 specialized volumes, while under optimum humidity and temperature conditions, fabrics mainly from the 18th to the 20th centuries are preserved. With a few exceptions, that is, such as this Coptic tunic from the 4th century. A lightning simulator, 1 million volts, the lightning rod factory. In real time, by way of the internet, Terrassa receives electrical storm updates for its entire municipal territory. This is a very useful tool with respect to protecting the different networks and instruments of the city's many companies. Terrassa strides towards the future. New buildings impose new architectural elements. This is the headquarters of the city's newspaper. The Terrassa Savings Bank building. The frescoes in the lobby are from the home of an important painter and nearby resident, Torres Garcia. It's always interesting to visit places of power, in this case economic power, and to witness a spectacle of architectural excellence. This meeting hall is underground and used for private meetings. Right above it, 25 iron columns are the only reminders of the steamer that once occupied this site. Grouped together and with nothing to support, they remind one of certain Greek ruins. In this case, the ruins date from the 18th century, when iron and brick were the basic materials for construction. We shall never be sufficiently appreciative of a material as humble as that which has written the history of so many cities. The Central Library. In the 19th century, many people from other parts of Catalonia came to Terrassa. In the mid-19th century, Spaniards from around the country came. And recently, Ecuadorians, Moroccans, Poles. Terrassa is a Catalonian city in its soul, but its arms are wide open. The different alphabets adorning the public library are meant to honor language in general, but are also a metaphor for Terrassa itself. An open city with coexisting languages, a welcoming receptor of immigration. Some 10 minutes from the city center, one can enjoy the Sant Llorenç de Munt Nature Park. Boxwood and oak trees dominate the flora here. And on a crest, the remains of an old Benedictine monastery. At its foot is the town of Matadepera, a residential area for many Terrassans. For many years now, the tradition of the Castells has formed part of many regional festivals. The origins of the Castells can be traced to Tarragona. An individual and collective effort, the same way cities are made. The Old Square is still one of Tarragona's main reference points. The Cathedral of the Holy Spirit, so transformed, has many elements of interest inside, and is also the site of the new archbishopry. The altarpiece may be the most important such work from after the Spanish Civil War in all of Catalonia. Almost 600 students come every day to this conservatory, with its 2 soundproofed rooms that still smell brand new.
Davant. Aquí vam dir que acabava el primer grup, comença un altre.
Theater, dance, zarzuela or Spanish light opera. The exciting cultural offerings on show at the Terrassa Savings Bank Cultural Center and the Alegría Theater. But much of the cultural excitement is created here. The Friends of the Arts is an institution with great ascendancy and influence. cinemas, restaurants, discotheques, bars. A complete range of options in the Del Valles Park. But in Terrassa, people don't just listen to jazz during the city's famous festival. In the middle of the city, the Jazz Cava is a reference point for many music fans year-round. At the same time, many others are taking care of their bodies, while still others are resting theirs. This is a city that gets up early. In a wider sense of the term, getting up early could also be considered part of the industrial heritage, though it's most probably stuck somewhere very deep down in the collective consciousness. There's too much verticality in Terrassa, and that must certainly mean something. The Palau Tower, the monument built to honor the working woman, the female sculpture outside the library, even the Castell's climbers, all seem like they want to touch the sky. But above all, the chimneys. Dispossessed of its original function, this looks like a bell tower of industrialization, or a menhir made out of bricks. Though it could also be a cylinder that is dreaming, or a column holding up the clouds. But no, it's just a chimney. Nothing more, nothing less. The 24 of them that have been preserved perhaps best describe the yearnings of the entire city and the strong-willed pride of persistence.